My name's Juniper, and I've got a story that'll make your skin crawl. I used to work for a utility outfit covering the wide-open prairies of eastern Colorado, western Kansas, and bits of Nebraska. My job was to inspect solar arrays when they went offline, figuring out what kind of damage needed fixing. Picture those massive fields of panels gleaming under the sun when they worked. When they didn't, I'd drive out, often deep into the middle of nowhere, to assess what gear the repair crews needed. These days, drones might do it, but back then, it was me, my truck, and a flashlight, usually alone. I did this for nearly a decade before I threw in the towel, partly because of what I'm about to tell you. The pay was solid, and there was plenty of downtime between jobs. But when something broke, it was a big deal, grueling 16-hour shifts for days on end. I couldn't hack it forever. Burnout's a real thing in this line of work. So, where do I start? I'd been at it for about 7 years when this thing happened near a little town called Sterling, Colorado. It was 2007, and an entire solar farm went dark without warning. I got the call at 1 a.m. to head out to a site about 12 miles north of town. The power station feeding Sterling was way off in eastern Colorado, so until I found and fixed the issue, the town was lights out. I rolled into Sterling by 3 a.m., 2 hours after the call. Most days, the job was calm, but when it wasn't, it was middle-of-the-night chaos. I had just enough time to stumble out of bed, splash water on my face, throw on clothes, and hit the road. Sterling was pitch black, save for a few flickering generator lights and the odd headlight. The vibe was creepy. Dark buildings have a way of feeling alive in the worst way. The more they're supposed to be lit, the spookier they get when they're not. This was '07, so cell phones worked in big cities, but Sterling, with its 13,000 or so folks, was more a big town than a city. Internet was a pipe dream out there, and the place felt deserted as I drove through in the early April dark. The sun was hours from rising. I pulled into the emergency ops center at the town's community center. The setup was sharp. Local fire and police had it together, used to handling outages in brutal winters. A spring night in the 60s must have felt like a vacation. Still, there was this weird tension, like everyone was waiting for something bad to drop. It was a few years post 9/11, so I figured they were spooked about sabotage or something. Looking back, I wonder if they knew more than me. I'm getting ahead of myself. I checked in with the fire chief and the sheriff, letting them know I'd head out after a quick bathroom break and maybe a coffee. I always touched base before a job unless I thought I could fix it solo, which happened now and then. The sheriff offered me an armed escort, which threw me. I thought he was worried about coyotes or me getting lost. I said no, figuring it was a quick trip. Man, I wish I'd taken him up on it, if only to have someone else see what I saw. He didn't push, just pointed to a map on a bulletin board showing the solar array's location and the route. I grabbed a coffee and a bagel from a table, used the restroom, and was out in under 10 minutes. The dark streets of Sterling swallowed me again as I left the glowing ops center. The drive to the array was unnerving, the flat prairie stretching into nothing. I reached the first solar panel row, their sleek surfaces glinting faintly under my flashlight. A gift from my partner, bright enough to cut through the night like a blade. Back then, a light like that made me feel like a sci-fi hero. I checked the first row, nothing wrong. I wanted a sense of how far out the damage was, so I kept driving along the access road. Part of my job was checking for environmental issues. The arrays were far from trees, so fallen branches weren't a problem, but a big enough storm could mess with the panels or wiring. I stopped a few times to look for debris, but found nothing. The area was oddly tidy, the grass clipped short even a mile from town. Usually, you'd hit taller grass where local maintenance stopped, and that meant watching for snakes or critters. Nothing makes you feel more mortal than being 20 miles from a hospital with a rattlesnake bite. I'd been driving about 25 minutes, and the panels looked fine, which was good news. It meant the issue was likely isolated, maybe one bad connection. I might even fix it myself if I had the right parts. I stopped at the next row, got out, and swept my flashlight around. That's when I saw something nuts. There was a huge gouge in the ground, like something had clawed out a chunk of earth. I followed the trail to a massive slab of dirt and rock, sitting upright in a ditch like it had been planted there. It wasn't natural. control. No way wind or rain did that. I shook my head, baffled. What could have caused this? Vandalism? But who'd haul a slab of earth out here for no reason? It would have taken serious machinery. I pulled out my old digital camera. Phone cameras were junk back then, and snapped a dozen shots. The flash lit up the scene like lightning, showing more damage. Broken shrubs and churned soil stretching into the sparse brush nearby. The slab still had fresh grass on it, meaning this happened recently. I thought back to the tense vibes at the ops center and wondered if someone was pulling a stunt, but why? Then, a sharp crack split the silence from the brush behind me. I spun, flashlight beam cutting through the dark, but saw nothing. My camera went back in my bag. I figured it was a fox or maybe a deer, but I wasn't sticking around to find out. I had a job to do. I drove on, slower now, scanning for more weirdness. The work was tougher in the dark, but that's how it went. Find the problem at night so crews could roll out at dawn. No more torn up earth, no damaged panels. I reached a row that was clearly the issue. Metal fragments littered the ground, and the support frame was bent like a cheap toy. I got out, yawning as the cool night air hit me. I grabbed my coffee, leaned on the truck's hood, and shined my light up. I nearly choked. A huge chunk of stone, smooth, like it was carved, was wedged into the frame 50 feet up. Not a boulder, but a slab with clean edges, like someone had jammed it there. The top of the frame was gone, not broken but missing. It was like something had ripped it clean off. I scanned for crash debris, thinking maybe a vehicle hit it, but found nothing. The cables were torn, not cut, lying in the dirt. That kind of force was unreal. No power was flowing, so no fire risk, but I had no clue about the next row's cables. I checked them quickly, then looked at the frame again. The torn metal had deep, evenly spaced grooves, maybe a foot wide. They reminded me of something, but I couldn't place it. Maybe faulty construction? I took 30 photos for my report, knowing this frame was toast. As I walked back to my truck, a loud crack and thud echoed. I spun, thinking the stone had fallen, but my flashlight showed nothing in the brush. I half expected to see some rogue construction crew, but it was empty. I kept moving, spotting sparking cables ahead. I radioed the ops center to cut power to the next 2 rows, confirm the cables were dead with my voltage meter, and take them off with insulated gloves. The cables were too thick for my junction box, so I cleared nearby brush to keep things safe. Just as I finished, another thud hit, closer now. I felt it in my boots. My light swept the brush. Nothing. The sound kept coming like heavy steps. My heart raced. Fight or flight kicked in, but why? I still had to check the next row. Shaking, I drove on, regretting passing on that escort. What could make that sound? Nothing out here was that big. I tried to focus, desperate to confirm the next row and get out. I stopped, checked the next row, fine, just slack cables, and turned back. Then I froze. A gibbous moon broke through clouds, casting pale light on a massive shape in the brush, maybe 50 feet tall. I couldn't see details, but it was staring at me. I didn't dare shine my light. We stood there, locked in a silent standoff. I thought about radioing for help, but a chopper wouldn't arrive until dawn, and the sheriff was too far. As I steeled myself to move, the thing lurched forward, snapping branches with a deafening thud. I bolted to my truck, dove in, and floored it, spinning into a 3-point turn. The ground shook with thumps. My headlights caught gnarled, grayish shapes, not trees, moving. I sped back towards Sterling, the thumps trailing me. Passing the damaged row, I heard metal scream behind me. Something heavy landed ahead. A piece of the frame, maybe 300 pounds, tossed like a pebble. I swerved, heart pounding. The thing was tearing through every row I passed, the crashes deafening. The thumps didn't stop until I hit Sterling's edge. The town's dark streets felt like a shield. I sped to the ops center, reported a freak storm to explain the damage, and kept quiet about the rest. I was too shaken. Dawn crews found 5 rows wrecked, 1 flattened. They bought the storm story, thank God. Later, going through my photos, I noticed something that still chills me. The grooves on the frame matched deep scratches on the stone slab. They weren't random, they looked like claw marks.